Well, another question from Reddit, speaking of aliens. I would be curious to hear David's views on conspiracies and conspiracy theories, the extent to which real conspiracies happen, and why conspiracies that have little evidence behind them manage to be so compelling to people regardless. Also, please bring up aliens and UAPs.
Okay. Where do we start?
The conspiracy, what? What are in general, as a person who thinks about politics, thinks about this world, like where do conspiracy theories fit in for you?
I think there have been conspiracies, and by conspiracies, I'm using a colloquial definition, which is basically individuals working together to, in a clandestine way, impact or affect some kind of event or phenomenon, very, very broadly. I mean, certainly that those things have happened. To jump around to some of the things that were in there, I think the reason that conspiracy theories are so compelling is that it's really tough for a lot of people to accept there are random events, not predictable specifically. At a stochastic level, we might be able to predict them, but specifically unpredictable, bad events in many ways. I could be the victim of one, or you could, or my family could. That's really scary to a lot of people, understandably so. And for some people, it's less scary and more soothing in a way to say, there aren't really random events like this. Somebody planned it. And if we had just known who planned it, it just could have been stopped because we would have known exactly when. That's just at a psychological level easier to accept for people. And I get that to some degree. Because, listen, it's not the most exciting thing that everything can just be going fine and something absolutely horrible happens and kills, who knows, some number of people. So I think that's the biggest attractor to a lot of these conspiracy theories. It doesn't apply to all of them, though.
But there's still kind of a basic understanding of human nature where some people are greedy and want power and are corrupted by power. So there's kind of these compelling narratives that stick. That I don't know, the vaccine is a opportunity for a powerful billionaire to implant chips into you so he can control you further.
Right.
It doesn't seem. What do I want to say? It's like for some reason that doesn't seem as crazy as it should. Because you think like maybe Hollywood contributes to that. But you think, yeah, you could imagine an evil person, a person that wants more control, more power, and is also at the same time able to convince themselves, as history shows, that they actually have the best interest of the populace in mind, that they're trying to do good for the world. So they do evil while trying to do good. And you can kind of imagine it. So it's like, why not? And you listen to people in power, authorities, they kind of look and sound shady, like the transparency, especially the older ones. I think younger folks are better at being like real and transparent and just like revealing their flaws and the basic humanity. But people that are a little bit older in the positions of power, they're more polished. They're more like it feels like they're presenting a narrative where the truth is hidden in the shadows. So
I don't think there's anything wrong with suspecting maybe a public figure isn't giving me the full story.
Yeah.
Totally reasonable thing to question. I don't think there's anything wrong with exploring a lot of these different things. I think the problem becomes, and I know you've talked about this in so many different ways with other guests, the problem becomes when we lose a shared understanding of how we would assess whether any of these things are true. And then both alleged evidence and an absence of evidence both become supportive of the conspiracy theory. Because if there's bad evidence, you manipulate it and say it's good evidence. If there's no evidence, you say the evidence was obviously hidden by the people who carried out the thing or whatever. So unless we can have a shared understanding of how we would determine what's true, these are common conversations often between atheists and religious folks. How can we like, is my faith in something or my desire for something to be true a good way to evaluate whether it is true? They're really similar questions.
Well, let me ask you about Trump on that front, about the election, 2020 election, and maybe the better question is about January 6th. Do you think January 6th was a big deal?
I do.
How big of a deal?
Compared to what?
Civil War.
I think it was less of a big deal than the Civil War.
Okay.
No, I mean, so it's a very interesting thing, though, right? Because we have not only the event. That's clever, actually. It's not only the event, but it's what led up to it and what has happened since, and did it change what is considered on the table that citizens can, should, or might do if they disagree with the results of an election. So I think that there are further reaching consequences than just was the 6-hour period on January 6th a bigger or smaller deal than the Civil War. And there's so much wrapped up into it. Many conspiracy theories flowed from January 6th as well. 60 Minutes recently featured a guy named Ray Epps, who was targeted by some on the right, claiming that he was an instigator or an agent of the FBI or something along those lines. There were people claiming that it was like a no true Scotsman sort of thing. Like Trump supporters wouldn't riot, so by definition, it must have been Antifa. Police let him in, or police were, all these different things. I think it was a big deal in a lot of ways because it completely made us have to go back to the top to say, okay, what are the parameters of valid discussion and activism in the United States?
But what aspect of the January 6th was bad for you?
Well, I mean,
like if you're thinking it from a big philosophical, political perspective, so presumably the number of people hurt and the number of people who died is not the only metric to consider here.
Absolutely. I think the sum total of what it means about how the United States operates is what's most concerning. And I'll kind of just like flesh it out a little bit. So summer of 2020, Trump's already saying they're going to cheat. Now, the polling is close, but it shows that Biden's in a good position. People aren't happy with Trump. Any reasonable person would look and say, it's going to be close, but Biden certainly wouldn't be a crazy thing if Biden won. Trump's already saying they're going to cheat with mail-in ballots, or they're going to cheat with early voting, or they're going to cheat with machines, or we should do only in person, or whatever else the case may be. We have the election. We knew in certain states how the vote count was going to go. Some states stop counting at 10 p.m. Some states count all of the mail-in stuff up front. Some don't. Everything was completely predictable. At 2 a.m., Trump comes out and says, I won. Okay, but where are you getting that, sir? As he claims people always refer to him. Where are you getting that? And with that statement, immediately we see that there is a large portion of this country that either is unable or unwilling to say, wait a second, the polling all said this was a real possibility. The counting schedules are all being adhered to. But Trump won? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't happen. It builds. People are donating millions to Trump for supposed audits, which nobody can define, and lawsuits, which go nowhere. And it builds and builds and builds. And we have a total separation from a factual reality. There's no reason to think by December 1st, right? Give it 3 weeks to look through some of this stuff. By December 1st, there's no reasonable case to be made that Trump actually won. But it doesn't end there. It goes into maybe we can just like send different electors. Even though Biden won Arizona, let's just like send, I don't remember how many electors it is in Arizona. Let's just like send Republican electors to say, we vote for Trump. But that's not democracy. That's not the way the system works. Let's make sure we're ready. Ready for what exactly? And then it builds to maybe Mike Pence can just like prevent Biden from being president, or maybe we can just interfere in this other way. And then it gets to let's break into the Capitol. It's the height of saying we no longer comport ourselves attached to what is a verifiable factual reality. And when we no longer do that, we're also willing to commit crimes, property crimes, violent crimes, to different degrees, in order to try to have something other than democracy. It wouldn't be democracy if any of those things had happened.
Yeah, I think it's not the height of it. I think there's still a case to be made that did not leave the realm of protest versus a violation of the principles of democracy. So to me, the height of what could happen on January 6th is if Donald Trump was much better executive, he could take control of the military.
If it had succeeded.
No, not even succeeded. The attempt would have been more empowered.
I understand.
So like the way, not to bring up Hitler every other word, which is something your subreddit also told me not to do.
Okay.
He's kind of an important figure. It's interesting to study that moment in history because it reveals so much about human nature and that all of us are capable of good and evil. But thank you, dear subredditor or redditor, for your contribution to the conversation. I will keep bringing up Hitler and the Third Reich, and I'll keep bringing up Stalin. There's so much to learn from that. Anyway, an effective practiced authoritarian could roll the tanks out into the city streets to establish order, and in so doing, pause the process of democracy, as opposed to a few protesters breaking in to a questionably protected building.
I agree that what you're saying would be worse. I don't want to use it to minimize what the protesters were intent on doing. They failed, fortunately.
But to you, the intention was there.
The intention was Trump should remain president.
Yeah.
That's the intention. And to what lengths they would have been willing to go if by the early evening, they were sort of like forced out. I don't know. I agree with you that Trump trying to use the military would absolutely be worse. There's these reports that he tried to seize voting machines, which is kind of funny because it's like, once you get the machine at Mar-a-Lago, what do you do with it exactly? I don't know. There's a comedic element to Trump sitting around with voting machines, but he did float trying to do some other things. I don't believe there's reporting that he actually tried to use the military.
I wonder to what degree this opened the door to further things like this with other candidates on, even in the Democratic Party also. Do you think there will be more and more questioning of the election results?
There has been already. It's very clearly the playbook. Carrie Lake lost. She ran for governor in Arizona, 2022. She lost. What I mean by that is her opponent received more votes. It's like very clear what it means that she lost. She insists to this day that she won. To this day. She did the same grift Trump did about donate. We've got a case. We won in the case. You didn't win. They just set a court date. Like that's not what, lies upon grift upon lies. So they did it then. It's extraordinarily saddening, but it seems like this is now going to be part of the playbook.
Do you think people on the left will start doing it?
I don't have a reason to believe that is going to happen, but I'm not going to say it never could. Absolutely, it certainly could. People on the left could start using it as a tactic. Right now, there's not a sign that that's going to happen, but it's certainly good. My expectation is, and I'm not a betting man, but I would bet money, if Joe Biden loses in November of 2024, he will say, I lost. He will call the winner. He will concede, and he will leave the White House in an orderly fashion.
You don't think there will be claims of a hacked election? The ability to hack elections is becoming more and more effective with the developments on the artificial intelligence side.
The difficulty is you're basically saying, will something happen without me knowing anything about the election? Imagine there really was evidence of a hacked election. Then I would want those claims to be made. But the way elections have gone in the past, I don't expect that that's a claim that would be made. No.